I spend enough time bashing on libertarians, but we actually do need to assess and evaluate what it is the libertarian establishment believes, thinks, and says, and why they're so easy to bash. Jo Jorgensen on Black Lives Matter, quote, "I think we should support the protesters." But she warns against, quote, "opportunistic people hijacking the movement." And this almost perfectly encapsulates the problem with libertarianism. Saying that we should support Black Lives Matter and at the same time warning against opportunistic people hijacking the movement, when in reality we've all seen the riots, we've all seen the footage. The people sabotaging and being opportunistic about Black Lives Matter are Black Lives Matter. But let's take them at their word. Let's go ahead and actually delve in deeper here. It's Thursday in Nashville, and Libertarian presidential nominee Jo Jorgensen has parked her blue campaign bus in Centennial Park for her, quote, "Real Change for Real People" tour. There are tables with masks and hand sanitizer. Supporters gather early. Their excitement seems unaffected by the pandemic precautions. A few cars slow down to observe the gathering in the park. After a mic check, she is introduced and begins to speak. Her speech covers the two most pressing topics of the summer: criminal justice reform and the COVID-19 pandemic. Back in June, she attended a Black Lives Matter vigil for victims of police brutality. Now, for those of you who know anything about the victims of police brutality, there were a total of 9 unarmed black victims of police brutality, and most of those deaths were justified, and those that weren't have gone to trial. The officers have been charged. So, her presence there received mixed reviews, with libertarians who distrust the Black Lives Matter organization for some of its political and economic views, facing off those who believe libertarians should be present in Black Lives Matter movement protests. Hence the reason why we can't take libertarians seriously. Now, they have a citation here where it goes, "The differences between the organization and the movement are explained here," and we'll take a look at that link in a little bit. Regardless of potential backlash, she doubled down on her stance. "We need change, and I'm glad the protests are getting the attention," she tells me on the bus after the speech. She says the Libertarian Party agrees with the National Black Lives Matter organization on several issues, such as the drug war, no-knock raids, and qualified immunity? The fuck is qualified immunity? But their answer is more government, she says, and big government is what got us here to begin with. Well, then why are you supporting them? If they have the wrong solutions, you don't go chasing after them. You don't give them more power and attention. Jorgensen mentions a meeting she had with a Black Lives Matter activist in Tulsa. The activist was not affiliated with the official Black Lives Matter organization. Well, that's kind of important. They discussed the government's role in discrimination, with Jorgensen pointing out that the buses in the famous Montgomery bus boycott were publicly run and that segregation laws were enforced even though black residents made up the majority of the ridership. Now imagine today if Uber decided to discriminate against the majority of their customers. What if they treated their best customers that way? They would go out of business, she had argued. Jorgensen says the activist told her that the experience was opening his eyes. Well, yes, libertarians can make sense, but that doesn't mean that you jump on the banner and platform of Black Lives Matter. You don't give them credence. Libertarians have been talking about these issues for 40 years. I think we should support the protesters, but at the same time, get rid of the opportunistic people hijacking the movement. The people hijacking the movement is the foundation the foundation, the organization that founded Black Lives Matter to begin with. That's who's hijacking your cause, Jorgensen. That's why we don't take you seriously. She points to people who use the protests to loot and commit violence. Yes, and most of them were either white allied Antifa or fellow Black Lives Matter activists on the streets. That's who's committing the violence. She says that they're going around basically inserting themselves into a peaceful protest. No, Jorgensen, again, you are being far too kind to your opposition. They're not inserting themselves into a peaceful protest. The protesters are providing cover for violence. That's the reality of it. And she says she's seen many clips of protesters saying, "Stop it, go away, you're not helping us, we don't want you here." And that might be well and good. But in the places where there's been the most damage, like Portland, like Washington, like the Chopped-in Chaz, that is not the case. We have a serious issue of Black Lives Matter as an organization with Antifa inciting and creating violence, and the quote-unquote peaceful protesters providing cover. That is the reality. When the demonstrations first began in May, Black organizers and protesters across the nation desperately attempted to keep the violence in check. Oh my gosh. In one video, DC protesters hand-deliver a young man to nearby police after seeing him destroy a sidewalk. In her first-hand account of the Nashville protests, author Nancy French tweeted a video of a black protester arguing with white protesters over property destruction. We need to do what we can to keep the protests on target. Yes, Jorgensen. The problem is, what direction will the protests serve? Are they going to serve the Libertarian Party, or are they going to serve the socialist Black Lives Matter movement, as is in their manifesto? They're basically their About Us page. What do you think these protests are going to lead to, and are you being intelligent about this? The conversation then shifts to COVID-19. We're all adults, and it shouldn't be against the law to be stupid. Yes. Jorgensen notes that with personal freedom comes responsibility. While she doesn't support mask mandates, unless we're talking about a government building, or even a forced vaccine in the event that one is developed, Jorgensen sees private companies enacting mask policies as a sign that most Americans are taking the pandemic seriously. No, the mega corps don't represent the little people. How did you even come to that conclusion? That multi-billion-dollar international entities are the appropriate litmus test for the will of the American people. Capitalism as an economic force is not a barometer for morality, Jorgensen. This is another reason why people don't take libertarians seriously. This false equivocation between the force of the market and morality is incredibly wrong-headed, to the point that she, as a libertarian, is willing to believe that because these major corporate private companies are enacting mask policies are literally a sign that most Americans are taking the pandemic seriously. She says this shows what libertarians have been saying for decades, but does it? We still have entities who are requiring us to wear masks. We don't have to wait until the government tells us to, but this way we have a choice. I'm sorry, but when mega corporations, who are de facto monopolies, say we are going to unite and enact a policy, either you wear the mask or you shop elsewhere, that's not really a choice. That's coercion. That's force. Because their force in the marketplace is not. There's not much choice there, economically speaking. Jorgensen adds that private companies wouldn't enact mask policies if they thought doing so would harm their profits. Let me read that again. Jorgensen adds that private companies wouldn't enact mask policies if they thought doing so would harm their profits. Okay. Jorgensen, there is a modern phenomenon going on called get woke, go broke that has only recently started to become reversed. Only until very recently have companies been participating in policy actions that would literally harm their bottom line, disgust their customers, drive customers away from the hobby or the industry because of a policy that they believe to be ideologically and morally correct. This has been happening to a point that it has become a mantra: get woke, go broke. These private companies are so massive and large, they are not, I'm going to repeat this for those who don't know, they are not beholden to the free market. They are receiving subsidies from the government. So how can you stand there and tell me that these policies are a reflection of the economy when they clearly are not? Please come back down to earth. Please. I don't think they would be requiring a mask if they thought people would stop shopping in their store and they go out of business. So ultimately, this is coming from the individual. No, it's not. No one wants to wear a goddamn mask outside. I'm sorry. No one wants to worry about coming inside of a store and wearing a mask. No one. No one likes it. This is ridiculous that you would even suggest this. What does Jorgensen think the executive branch should be doing about the pandemic? I think the president has the obligation to lead the country and to get information out there to warn people. She is upset at President Donald Trump for saying, if you don't have COVID-19 symptoms, don't get the test. Given the disease's asymptomatic spread and long incubation period, she says this was irresponsible advice. I actually vehemently disagree. I think if you're asymptomatic, or if you're not having any symptoms, or there's no clear and present signs of you having the disease, you should not be wasting your time getting tested. You should be trying to get your ass back to work so you can provide for your family. That's what you should be doing. Jorgensen also notes the variety of ways the FDA and other federal agencies have restricted access to mass testing. Such testing, she notes, contributed greatly to South Korea's flattening of the outbreak curve. Does Jorgensen not know that our curve has already been flattened? It couldn't possibly get flatter. Yes, people are going to continue to die from COVID, but the rate in which they are dying has significantly dropped. The curve is flattened. This is not, and by the way, there was an event in Florida where three different testing facilities for COVID all reported that of all of their testing, each testing site had 100% positive results. 3 different testing sites tested so many amount of people, and every single test that they administered yielded a positive result, meaning everyone who got tested positive for COVID. If you're not smelling a rat there, I don't know where your head's at. And if everyone's popping positive on this test, there might be something wrong with the test. Okay? This is harebrained. We lost tens of millions of jobs because of shutdown. That is true. If we had testing out there, if we don't have the FDA obstacles, if we didn't have so many other government obstacles, we could have had widespread testing. And then we could have known which people should have stayed home and which could go out. Now, that's the crux of it all. If you do end up testing people and everyone's positive, what do you think the end result's going to be? There's not going to be we stay home, 14 days? If everyone has it and we all go home, how much longer is the shutdown, Joe? We seriously need to think about this. Oh my God. And then our conversation concludes with the question about the current debate over voting by mail. It's fine by me if we have mail-in votes, as long as we do it through FedEx. Oh, so pithy. So, that's the Libertarian Party, guys. Honking away forever.